during transportation. The evidence for the recent worldwide flood described in the Bible is all over North America. We have subducted seafloors, rapidly uplifted mountains, bent and folded but not broken sedimentary layers, similar fossils straddling both sides of the mid-Atlantic ridge, 13 states filled with dead dinosaurs mixed with marine life, massive submarine canyons, and boulders transported hundreds of miles. These all provide powerful confirmation of a global flood, just as the Bible records.
Discord or email or something. We've talked on the phone before as well, I think. So we'll communicate on what I can do to best support his efforts and really see if I can do anything to help that protest kick off, because I do think it's a really important event. Robin's in the chat. I should say hello to people I'm recognizing. Robin, it's always so great to see you. I really appreciate all the support you've given to the channel. Really enjoy watching your channel as well. I don't know. I think yesterday I dual streamed with a friend of mine, and that was a pretty wild conversation. We were at it for several hours, and I don't run that show or that channel, so I was kind of just there in the passenger seat like everybody else, but it was fun. And Jill came on at the very end. I don't know if you were there for that, but when I mentioned the debate, because a lot of people will say in the comments,
Jesus is Lord, and he's coming back. I'm back. Yeah, I know. I like my new times, my new stream times. I think this is better than 12 noon when no one else is watching. I like this time of the day. No one's up, disturbing me, bothering me. Yeah. Now, I'm not talking about my wife. I'm not talking about my wife. So don't do a video that Jill hates his wife. So he starts streaming at 5 a.m. in the morning. Objective ethics. Objective ethics. Thinks he's debunked the Noah's Ark. I mean, let me just say this before we get into this. These 20-year-olds, early 30s, they don't realize that these arguments have all been presented back in the Ken Ham days, the early Hovind days, Ken Hovind, and they've already been debunked. John Woodpremier wrote a book, The Feasibility of the Ark, answering all of these objections. But when I mention these sources, now, of course, everyone's familiar with Ken Hovind, and even Ken Ham to some extent. But Woodpremier, I mentioned Woodpremier as I go into these forums, these atheist echo chambers. They have never heard of these sources, never, and that goes to show you that the algorithm is fixed to only present one side of the argument. Their algorithms. That's why it's a good thing to get involved in debates and discussions on these matters, which you guys avoid. I appreciate OE, at least he's trying to engage. But for the most part, for the most of their lives, they've avoided Christians who can answer these questions on purpose, in my opinion, on purpose. Because a Christian that can answer these questions, all of them, the contradictions, the ark, the creationism, whatever the case may be, questions about the age of the earth. The Bible does not give us the age of the earth, by the way. All of these objections have answers, and they will avoid those Christians who do have the answers. In my assessment, psychologically, now I'm not a psychologist, although I am. I do work in the social, in the educational field, in the special education field. So I do have some background in this area. In my opinion, they are reserving these arguments or holding on to them for dear life, literally, so that they will have an excuse if there is a God. Because we know they're not sure. We know they're really agnostic. They're not. There are no more atheists. Okay, atheists died with Christopher Hitchens. Yeah, there are no more atheists. Okay, they're all agnostic now. They're all arguing agnosticism because they realize the logical entailment, conundrum they put themselves in by claiming to know that there is no God. Okay, so they're all agnostic. So they're holding on and reserving these arguments in their back pocket, like we would say, so that they, because they believe they're going to have an excuse and that these objections are valid. Therefore, I did not believe because of these objections. So naturally, they will avoid Christians who can deal with the objections. Naturally, it's a survival instinct, we can call it. Okay? They're surviving in the world of in this world of information overload. They are surviving at this point, barely, barely surviving. Okay. Uh, Let me put the link in the chat just in case if anyone's up and wants to come in. But we're going to take a look at objective ethics and what he does with Noah's Ark. Now, this ruse, I call it a ruse. Now, he may not realize this because he's in his 20s, but there are atheists that do realize that these arguments, who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and do realize that these arguments were already had, they were already dealt with, but they will regurgitate them for other reasons because they know they're atheists in their 20s who don't realize this, and they can sell books to them. They can sell these ideas and these books that they write, and make some money off of the ignorance of the atheist on the internet who's in his 20s and doesn't realize that these arguments have already been dealt with. And then there is the young objective ethics types who just haven't lived long enough to realize that these arguments have faded and they're no longer valid and they've been debunked. Okay. Ad nauseum, ad infinitum. Okay. So let's see what he has to say. He mentioned Joe. Oh no, he mentioned Joe. You really don't want to debate me, OE. You really don't. You want to debate a Christian like, geez, I'm trying to think of someone who I don't mind insulting. You want to you want to debate a Christian like um, Hillary's email, who's not really a Christian. That's who you want to debate. Okay, because then your insecurities will be uh, lessened. You'll be more confident in your rejection of God. But because if you debate me, you will lose confidence in your rejection of the God of the Bible. I promise you, you will. Oh, let me just say this. You will lose confidence in the arguments you've been presented, and you'll look for new arguments. Okay? That's my job. You think you have a contradiction in the Bible? Come to my channel. You will lose confidence in the idea that there are contradictions in the Bible, and you will find another angle. After you find 1,000 contradictions, alleged contradictions, and all of them are debunked, then you'll come to me saying that, well, the Bible contradicts science. And you'll find a new angle. Okay, that's my job. That's what I've been doing on the internet for 7 years. So now I want to talk some science, which I rarely do. I never really talk about science because the heavens and the earth declare the glory of God. I really don't need to convince an atheist that God exists. I mean, just look at the universe. If you think this occurred by happenstance, then something is mentally wrong with you. So I don't really argue atheists on these points. And I don't try to argue that God exists. I don't try to prove to an atheist that God exists. My argument for God's existence would actually militate against their point that they're making. Let me explain what I mean by that. They argue that there is no empirical evidence for the God of the Bible. Okay, my belief, now many Christians hold to this, many Christians do not. I really don't care. But my personal belief is that if there is empirical evidence found to prove the God of the Bible's existence, then that would not be the God of the Bible. That would be some other God. Or if the God of the Bible is exposed, he's a fraud because he says he cannot be exposed in that way. So to find empirical evidence for the God of the Bible is to debunk the God of the Bible. In fact, that's the only way to debunk the God of the Bible. It's the only way you can, or other than to find the tomb of an identifiable tomb containing the corpse of Christ, containing his body. If you find that, then you debunk Christianity. So Christianity is entirely falsifiable, unlike Allah and his aloofness, where you cannot reach him, you can't figure him out in history, you can't find him anywhere. He's aloof, he doesn't communicate, he could be up there hiding and no one knows it. So he could exist, or he could not be falsified. Rather, he cannot be falsified. The God of the Bible can be falsified. Christianity can be falsified. Don't listen to atheists when they make these dumb arguments. Okay, test all things in light of Scripture and hold fast to the good. All right, OE. Let's see what he has to say about the Ark of Noah.
That section, yeah, let's debate. And then when you actually try and pin them down, they run away. So I wanted.
No, sir. No, sir. No one is running away from debating any atheist, and not Joe. So don't mention my name and running from atheist in the same sentence. Here's my availability again. Now, spring break, I'm available all week. Any day, anytime. You want to set up something on Sundays, I'm available all day. Typically, I'm available after 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. Sundays, I'm available all day. Saturdays, I'm available in the evening. If you set something up and tag my name in it, I'll probably show up there if it's during those time intervals. So the only ones running from debate are atheists. Okay, they're running not from debating nominal Christians. They'll run to those encounters. But if it's someone like myself, oh well, they'll make excuses. Well, he's rude. Well, he's a troll. Um, don't talk to Joe. But yeah, well, don't talk to any knowledgeable Christian if you want to maintain your excuse for not believing in the God of the Bible. If you want to maintain that.
To get Jill, he said in the comments, it was on Maud's channel a couple days ago, that he would debate me on biblical morality. So I wanted to get him to say live that he would do that debate, which he did. So I'm pretty excited about that. So we'll see if he runs away or if he actually sticks to that. But yeah, I'm definitely down to do a debate on biblical morality. As many of you know, I've done a
set up a video, biblical morality, tag Jill in it. Make sure it's after 8 p.m. Or if it's this week, it doesn't really matter. I'll see it. I'll find it. I'll click the link. Let me provide the link for my channel just in case someone dares come in here. Which they won't. They won't come in here and debate me. But if a nominal Christian starts to stream, oh, they'll run to that encounter. They will run to that encounter for sure. But not the fundamentalist Christian. They do not want to debate fundamentalists because now I have to read. They've redefined fundamentalists, so I have to show you what that redefinition is, and then give you the right definition. Unfortunately, a fundamentalist to an atheist today, it's been redefined, is someone who actually believes what the Bible teaches, and not that we take the Bible literally. That doesn't make sense. Okay, Right, that doesn't even make sense. Well, do you take the Bible literally? What the hell are you talking about? You would get laughed out of any lecture hall, any English language arts college lecture hall. You'd get laughed out of. Okay, any high level college literature, you know, class or course. When we say we read the Bible as literature, so there are times that the Bible does use literary devices, and then we take in that into consideration. And there are times when it's giving you historical facts. So we are able to recognize that, and metaphors and similes are not, or parables, which are just extended metaphors, are never designed to teach you mythology in the Bible. We don't have fables in the Bible. The imagery, for example, the imagery that Jesus Christ uses when he describes hell is not to tell you how hell looks like. It's designed to tell you how hell is like. Okay, so he uses metaphors and simile, and he compares Gehenna, which is a actual place in Jerusalem, a place of destruction, a place of fire and discomfort, and the smell was probably putrid. So he uses that as imagery to describe a place that no one has been, that doesn't even exist at this point in time. Some would argue. Oh no, hell does hell exist right now? I'm not sure what the argument is theologically, as far as eschatology is concerned. But a place where surely no one has ever been except for Christ. I don't even think Christ has been to hell. I think he was Hades, or the underworld. But it's a place that no human has experience of. So he uses imagery because that's the best way to relate to people who have no idea about this spiritual reality. He uses a real life place. And he says hell is like this, not hell looks like this. This is how hell is, right? It's like if you walked into a special ed classroom, run by a teacher with zero organizational skills or um, classroom management skills. You'll say this is what hell looks like, right? We use that type of speech all the time, but that doesn't turn hell into an allegory. Doesn't mean that hell is not a real place. I can use metaphor and literary genre devices to describe what happened at 9/11. I can cast the planes as fiery darts from the enemy, fiery darts hitting the towers. It doesn't mean that I am now all of a sudden turning the 9/11 story into mythology. Okay. So we need to be careful when we're engaging the atheists when they use these terms and these criticisms about how we read the Bible. Do you read it literally? Do you take the Bible literal? Um, Ask them to explain what they mean by that. Okay. Did I put the link? Yeah, the link is it's pinned in the chat just in case anyone dares come in. Jay Passick tried to come in the other day and got embarrassed. He couldn't even get past premise 1 of my slavery challenge, but not bragging, but it has to be done. Okay, it was done in the 80s, it was done in the 90s, it was done in the 2000s by various groups, Christian groups. So it has to be done now. And I'm sorry, we have to do this every 10 years because these guys come up with these arguments, they regurgitate these same arguments from 1980. All right, where were we?
Handful of debates. I've actually performed very well in most of them. In fact, I've only lost one debate, and I lost to the king of the hill, Mark Reed, who's a goddamn
He's only lost one debate to an atheist, Mark Reed, the king of the hill, he calls him. Sir, if you debate me, you're going to lose the second debate. I guarantee you. But you're not going to say you lost, even though every point you make will be shot down promptly, will be debunked. Every single point you make. Now, what the atheist is really skillful at is making or providing what I call irrelevant factoids. That way they don't lose debates, quote unquote. So they'll make a positive claim, yes. When we go to try to debunk that claim, we're eager to debunk anything you say, but then we realize that the positive claim you make was a fact, but it is irrelevant. So you sound knowledgeable. You sound like you have information on the topic. That's the point. That's why they're doing that. That's why they're putting forward these factoids. But you're really not moving the proverbial ball forward in the debate. You're not really proving your premises, one, whatever it might be, your claims. You're not really doing that. You're just telling us a bunch of facts. Dr. Josh does this. When we bring up slavery in the Bible, he does this. Well, do you know there were 7 types of slaves, Joe? Did you know there were Akazar? Do you know what their names were? Doesn't matter. Were any of them forced into chattel slavery against their will? That's what I need to know. I don't care if there were 7 different types of workers or people or designations or levels or hierarchies of slaves. Well, I'm a bond servant. Well, I'm a accusar. I work for the king. I'm a suzerain vassal. I work for the king. Ibrahim, Eved Ibrahim, okay, the slave of Abraham, who, by the way, if Abraham did not have a son, would have inherited all of Abraham's wealth. A slave from Damascus, so he was not even Hebrew. He was from another land. But in the Israelite culture, if you were a slave, you could purchase them and they would be adopted. Adopted through manumission is what scholars call it. They would be adopted into your family and inherit your wealth. Unless you have your own son, then of course the firstborn would get that. It's too bad for the slave boy. But that's just how it is in the ancient Near East. That's how it is today. If I have a son, then I'm no longer going to be charitable to all the kids running around in the playground like I used to be in my 20s before I had kids. I'm going to now concentrate on building my legacy with my children. Okay, so no more handing out, free lunches and helping the single moms and doing all those things that we do when we have children. We now focus on their legacy and building our legacy and focus on their future. Okay, so when Abraham had his son, Eleazar no longer was in line to inherit the wealth. Okay, I'm sure he got something, but he's no longer going to be the heir to the throne or the heir to his land. So I'm bringing up these objections to the Bible with me will put you in will guarantee you a loss. OE. Okay. You're guaranteed a loss. So you better pick your topics wisely. Now, the topic he picked, you're going to get crushed, my friend. He wants to debate me on morality, which means slavery is going to come up, which means he's going to lose that battle. And then he's going to try something else like genocide, and he's going to lose that battle as well. You really don't have an argument for morality, not when your women or you're voting for your women to kill their own offspring. In fact, there are mammal species that kill their own offspring. However, the difference between these disgusting liberals, these disgusting feminazi women, and a mammal that might kill her young in the wild, well, we're all animals. Yeah, your women are animals. Our women are not animals. Your women are animals. Disgusting, tattooed, piercings everywhere, blue haired, cringy, grimy looking women that you frequent, disgusting body count of 50. Your women are disgusting. Your women are animals. Okay. The difference between other mammals, I would rather marry a bear than one of your women. The difference between other mammals, a female bear, I'd rather marry a female mammal of another species than any of your women, liberal. The difference between Jill's promoting bestiality. Now I'm serious. I would rather marry another mammal from another female from another species. Of course, I would rather marry my wife, but let's say we're single and those were my options: a female uh, liberal who kills her own offspring, or some sort of other mammal species. I would choose the other mammal species. No, just but bit of hyperbole. But the difference is when they kill their young, they're killing their young because they realize that it won't survive. Your women, OE, your women that you marry them? You marry a woman who would kill her own child? You are the dumbest person that ever lived. Okay, the difference between you're the dumbest mammal that ever lived. The difference between them and your women is that when they kill their offspring, they're killing their offspring because it won't survive, and they know it won't survive. Okay. So your women killed their offsprings knowing that they're completely healthy. There is no defect, birth defect, there's no Down syndrome, is not being detected. Perfectly healthy baby, but I want to go to college. Your women are the most disgusting of all mammal species, of all females in the mammal species. Your women are the most disgusting. You will never win a debate against someone like myself when it comes to ethics. Never. Never, liberal. Never. You can't read the Bible to save your life. So you can't go to the passages in scripture to say, "Oh, look, these are your ethics, Christian." Can't read the Bible. The social sciences are on our side when it comes to ethics, when it comes to morality, as far as whose ethics and morals lead to the most positive of outcomes, objectively, empirically. You don't have an argument. Where is he going to go? I'm curious. I'm curious where he's going to go in this debate. But you know my schedule. I gave you my schedule, so the ball is in your court, liberal.
Savage when it comes to debate. He's so strong, and I really appreciate that he was
Reed is so strong.
even willing to debate someone like me with such little experience that I have. But that's the only debate that I've lost. I've won every other debate very handily, and they've all been about biblical morality. So I expect to do very well in a debate against Jill. I think there was another guy who said he would debate me on that topic, Toronto something. I can't remember his name, but
Toronto Bible Studies, who's not a Christian. Okay. Who's not a Christian. You're talking to a Christian right now. Toronto Bible Studies. I've debated him on scripture. I don't know what he believes. I think he might be a Muslim pretending to be a Christian, in my opinion.
the mod knows who he is. So, Robin, I said to Jill that I would like to do it on your channel because you mentioned being interested in hosting debates. So we need to communicate to each other on Discord or whatever. Or if you come on the show today, maybe we can talk
It'll be on your channel. Not going on Robin's channel.
about it once I open up the panel.
I don't even debate females. So I've gotten into arguments with females online, but I don't debate females online. I know she's just a moderator, but I don't accept female mods either, because that, even my navigator, I changed it to a male voice because I don't have females don't tell me what to do. They don't moderate Joe. Females do not moderate Joe. All right, ask my wife. Okay, I moderate females and children, but females do not moderate Joe.
Yeah, really looking forward to doing those two debates. Even though I'm really busy, doing formal debates takes a lot of time. I put a lot of preparation into those, and people who do formal debates know exactly what I'm talking about. I've done so many debates on biblical morality or biblical immorality, as far as I'm concerned, that I have a lot of material. It wouldn't take me too long to get something together, and it's a really easy debate to do. Buddy. So it's kind of I do feel like I'm punching down a little bit, just because that's such an easy topic to win. But if people want to try and defend the morality of the Bible, I think
no, sir, you it's not an easy topic to defend against. Now, notice he didn't name who he debated on this, because he probably was punching down, and he knows it. But no, it's not so easy when you're dealing with someone who can actually read the Bible for what it actually entails. Not so easy. Genocide is not in the Bible or prescribed in the Bible. Neither is slavery. Nowhere. You've never encountered a Christian that can actually defend that point, that idea. There is zero slavery, zero genocide in the Bible. Zero. And I'm basing that determination on the modern definitions of those words, slavery and genocide. The modern definition, not the biblical definition, because the biblical definition of a slave, Jay Passick found out, could mean several things. It could mean someone who volunteered to work like a butler or a maid, or it could mean someone who was forced into labor like a POW, or we would call a POW, who, yes, are still forced to work according to the Geneva Convention. They are forced to work. Okay, sometimes they will release captains and those of high rank, and other times they will hold them captive. Okay, depending on how much of a danger they can be, or how much of a spy they could be, or how valuable they are. Some of the scientists from the Third Reich were kept alive. They weren't killed, but most of the generals were killed. So the generals are either killed or held captive in war. Okay, so in conversations with these liberals, make sure you point out the fact that you're going to a passage in Deuteronomy 20 that is referring to end war strategies. What do you do at the end of a war with the generals? Do you kill them? Do you capture them? Do you add them to your army and hope they don't, betray you or become double agents? What do you do in those circumstances? So they tried to cherry pick those circumstances in the Bible and say, look, slavery, look. No, idiot. When you go to war, Dr. Josh tried that trick in debate, in live debate, and I called him out in debate. Dr. Josh Hammurabi tried that garbage. You're not going to win an argument with Joe about slavery. So don't even bring it up, OE. You're going to lose that battle. You're going to embarrass yourself. Then he's going to try to bring up genocide. I'm going to tell you what this guy's going to do. He's going to try to bring up genocide, and I'm going to destroy that too. I'm going to destroy that too. This is zero genocide. Then perhaps he'll try to bring up some of the laws regarding the treatment of women or the inequality of women. He thinks his culture treats women better because he allows with them to kill their own offspring. Oh, look how good we are to women. look how good we are. Look how good we treat our women. We get them pregnant and don't marry them. We allow them to start having sexual encounters with men at 16. And we say that's normal. They're not married. We say that's normal, that's okay. Look how we treat our women. You're not going to win a debate with Jill on biblical morality. In scripture, she wasn't even allowed to go out because she didn't have a husband. She wasn't allowed to go out on her own and discover the world because it was too dangerous for her to do that. And the goal was to protect women and children, not harm women and children. You'll never win a debate on morality against a Christian that actually knows the Bible and morality or ethics and is familiar with today's ethics, what's going on today in politics. You have to be familiar with both. You have to know what the liberal is doing today to women to make those arguments and to juxtapose or compare the two. You don't know anything about politics and how you're just going to be responding to the atheist biblical illiteracy when it comes to what happened in the story of Noah, God killing all the people. You're just going to be responding. You're not going to be on the offense at all. That's why I like Andrew Wilson. He's on the offense. He gets the numbers. Charlie Kirk. That's why they killed Charlie Kirk, because he was so good at getting the numbers, the statistics, the social sciences, showing them that you are ignoring the social sciences when it suits you. You ignore the science of the anal cavity when it suits you. I guarantee you, if it were Christians, I can almost guarantee you, if it were Christians that were practicing this act, let's say it was part of the Levitical law, priesthood, or part of some Christian ritual to sodomize you, like baptism, let's say, I guarantee you there will be atheists lined up with statistics, so social statistics, commentary from physiologists, proctologist or anal rectal specialist. They'll have the full gamut to come down on the Christian and tell the Christian that what they're practicing doesn't correspond to science. I guarantee you that would be their approach to try to stop or debunk Christianity. But because it's their favorite pastime, they're going to ignore all of the science regarding the issue, and which says do not do it. Do not practice it. And if you're a government, you should not be condoning it. You should not be rewarding it at all. If you really care about your citizens, your people, and their well-being, you would not promote this behavior. You would try to sway people away from practicing it. You would not incentivize it at all. At all. In fact, you would punish that behavior whenever it's found out. In fact, we used to do that. We had sodomy laws. Okay. You'll never win a debate with a knowledgeable Christian, period. And let alone on ethics. You just haven't lived long enough to realize that, OE. That's all. That's your problem.
It should be exposed to just how immoral it really is. I can't think of any other housekeeping. I think that's pretty much it. If I'm missed anybody in the comments, hello to everybody who's joining. Always nice to see you guys. I think I see some new faces out there as well, which is always fun. So let me see if I could. First, I should show. I'm getting better at this technology stuff. Nice. This is working. Okay. So hopefully you guys can all read this
let's get
along with me. I just want to give you the background. I know we're all familiar with the Noah's flood story, right? It probably is. A lot of you who went to church when you were kids remember they give these cartoonish pictures of the boat, and you got the animals, the giraffes hanging out next to the lions and the sheep.
And ironically enough, you're going to give the same cartoonish description. You're going to force 100,000 animals on the boat, on the ark, when 100,000 animals were never said to be on the ark, just to make it sink. So you're going to do the same thing, but you just don't realize you're doing that. According to Wuppermere, only about 32,000 animals would have had to have been on the boat. 16,000 times 2, male, female. Where did you get 100,000 animals from? You made up that number because you realized that that would be enough for the boat to sink. Just like the prosecutor in New York who wanted to lock Donald Trump, take all his money, the woman who's now facing indictment for fraud herself. Can't think of her name. The DA from New York. She sued Donald Trump for this so-called fraud that he committed. She sued him for exactly the exact amount that was in his bank account, in his savings account. You created. They're basically trying to bankrupt the man. The exact amount that's in his bank account. Come on, bro. Come on, man. You're suing the man for the exact amount that he has in his savings account. We're not going to put that together. We're not going to. We're not going to put that together that you're trying to ruin the man. And then all of a sudden you drop the case now, right? So I guess he didn't commit fraud. You drop the case when he wins the presidency, right? So you put 100,000 animals on the ark, bro. You put grown dinosaurs on the ark. Grown dinosaurs. So it can sink, right? Good job. Good job, liberal.
All that bullshit, and it's so ridiculous. Just thinking about it makes me laugh. But it's painted to kids as this cutesy little story about the magic zoo boat. But if you actually stop and think about it, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrific.
It is horrible, and it is a horrible reason why God had to do it, as you'll see, as you will read. It's a very frightening scenario. And I thought about this text very, very hard and long. This is probably the scariest verse in all of Scripture. Besides, apart from me, I never knew you, you worker of iniquity. This is probably up there. This is up there with the scariest verse. Listen to what Moses says here about what was going on in those days. And by the way, Jesus says before he returns, it will be the same conditions as it was in the day of Noah before he returns. Okay.
What this actually means if it was a literal event. So it starts in Genesis chapter 6. All right, just a little bit of background on the story itself. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. And again, I'm not doing a deep dive into theology here, but the sons of God and the daughters of humans in this relationship, and I think later it'll mention Nephilim, is very interesting. It's very fascinating. You really need to tap into the book.
The sons of God and the daughters of men are human beings. Okay. I don't care whether any other Christian tells you. Okay, that's more than likely the correct interpretation, if you will. Now, it doesn't matter what you believe regarding this instance. That's not the line of demarcation that all of a sudden you're no longer a Christian now because you don't believe angels were having sex with women, or if you do believe that. That doesn't make you a non-Christian. It's what we call a non-essential. It's a non-essential because it's not something the apostles stressed or taught or made a requirement for you to believe in. Okay. Um, so if you believe either way, you're still a Christian, right? But this is referring to people, not angels or fallen angels or demons or whatever.
First Enoch to get the full picture with what this is talking about. We're not
And all you have to do is read the context to determine that. Okay.
going to get into that today, but definitely worth looking into, because as a literary device, the Bible is really interesting to read. If you just as a piece of literature, just like, you know, the Iliad or the Odyssey.
No, no. The Bible employs literary devices, but it's not a literary device. It doesn't even make sense. You don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, go to the English professor and make that comment, and he'll say, no, that makes zero sense. The Bible uses literary devices, metaphors, similes, imagery, hyperbole. Okay, just like any other great work. When you read history today, you don't often see the text cluttered with literary devices, because today history is rendered differently than how it might have been rendered in the ancient times. Okay. But that's not to put the Bible on the level of mythology just because it employs or uses literary devices
or anything like that. Okay, so then the Lord said, okay, so the Lord's really upset. These the sons of God are marrying these women, so these human women. So then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. And you get different variations of how this is worded, but it's the days are limited to 120 years. And this is actually where you get the second contradiction in the Bible that I could think of off the top of my head. The first one I mentioned earlier is the two creation myths. Between the first and second, you get a contradiction in the order.
There is no two creation myths. There's no contradiction in any. There's no chronology of creation in either. I would argue. Most Christians argue that there is a chronology in Genesis 1, but not Genesis 2. So you still lose the battle, the debate. Even if you're talking to someone other than myself, most Christians will say chapter 2 is not even attempting to give you a chronology. So when you're dealing with contradictions, if you're dealing with atheists and their so-called contradictions, deal with the underlying assumption first. Before you get into the text and get into whether or not this is a contradiction, what is the atheist assuming, presupposing? He comes in presupposing that the two texts are trying or attempting to mirror each other just because Genesis 1 is next to Genesis 2. No. He's assuming that both texts are trying to render a chronological account. Boy, why is that tough? That's a tough word to say for a black man. He is assuming that both Genesis 1 and 2 are attempting to do the same thing, to show you chronologically what happened. They are not. I would say neither of them are. But again, I hold to the literary framework view when it comes to Genesis 1. So neither account is giving you a chronology of creation. This happened, then this happened, then the sun was made, then this happened on the fifth day. It's not designed to do that. Okay. So you don't have a contradiction. You have a misunderstanding in what the author is trying to communicate. And then you base that misunderstanding, you build your straw man. At the base of your straw man is that presupposition, that assumption. Okay.
Of days, events and days. This is the second contradiction you're going to find. I think it is down in chapter 15.
And the 120 days has nothing to do with how long you will live. I mean, again, all of these objections were answered back in the 80s, but this guy hasn't lived long enough to realize that.
around 15, maybe 16 or 17, talks about Abraham and his wife Sarah dying, and it tells you that Abraham lived to like 156 or something like that, and his wife Sarah lived to 143.
The Bible records people living to 1,000 years, dum dum. So when you read these texts, don't don't you say to yourself, well, perhaps this must mean something else, rather than the author, contradict them. So now I know there are several authors. So they'll argue that because there are several authors, 40 actually, these contradictions can exist because they're not sitting next to each other and writing, uh, copying each other. Okay. But 120 years is not speaking about age. Okay. Bible records men that lived like Methuselah, who lived to live uh, to be almost 1,000 years old. Okay. So something should have triggered in your brain that says critical thinking skills should have emerged somehow in your cerebral cortex. I don't know how it works. Uh, as far as, as far as biology is concerned, but something should have triggered something in your head to say, maybe I better look more into that 120 years as to what that means. Okay. What this is saying is my spirit will not contend with humans. It will not put up with these idiots. They will only have 120 years before I send the flood. Okay. That's the plain reading of the text. I'll give you 100. You only have 120 days and you're done. Okay. That's the correct interpretation of this text.
Or whatever, 140 or something like that. So clearly God is not good at math. He doesn't have enough fingers to count to 120. They didn't have calculators back then. I'm not sure what the deal is, but
or you're just another biblically illiterate fool or atheist. Oh, speaking of fools, today is your holy day. Happy April's Fool's Day, liberal. I just realized that today was April 1st. Happy Fool's Day, atheist. You are a fool. Congratulations. God made you that way, so we rejoice in your existence, okay? My spirit will not contend with humans forever. I mean, this is plain English. This is plain. The translators tried their best to write this on a fifth or sixth grade reading level, and you still can't understand. My spirit will not contend or put up with humans forever. They are mortal, meaning they can die. Their days will be 120 years. Now, I understand that their days, we don't speak like that's Old English. They will have only 120 years to live. Okay. When someone and if you can watch the old types of movies that depict the uh, ancient times, the 1600s, 1500s, around there, and they'll say your days will be 100 years, or 100 days, or whatever. They're saying that you only have 100 days to live. Okay, it's a sentence. They're handing you a death sentence, and they're telling you how long you have. Okay, which was part of the torture. Okay, and then they would torture you for those 100 days or something, right? All right, so I mean, this is not even hard. This is not even tough stuff. That's how I know OE is not literate when it comes to the Bible. This is not even tough stuff. This is not. This doesn't even take any exegesis, really. This is plain. I mean, if you just read the context, my spirit will not contend with humans forever. I will not put up with you forever. Your days will be 120 years. After telling them, and then it goes on to tell you about how, I mean, he went about doing that in 120 days, 120 years. So if you read the context, you would know that something is going on in the earth. God is not happy with that. And he doesn't say, and it's about him sending the flood. It's not about him ending our life because he's at 120 years, or capping our lifespan at 120 years because he's upset. No, he's planning on wiping everyone out. You only have 120 years till this happens. Okay, that's just all right. Let's move on.
Maybe he just forgot that he was supposed to kill everybody at 120 years or less. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also.
Wait, what did he just say? He. I don't know if he's saying. Let's just move on. This is really just a minute point anyway. Let's just move on.
Afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every indication of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time, bad.
Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart. This is the scariest verse in the Bible, in my opinion. How can that be possible when there were babies that existed? That, my friend, is frightening. Only God would be able to see or have a glimpse into that information. Even the children, yes. Because they would have been trained to do exactly what their parents were doing. Yes. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Okay, now again, this is not directly speaking about children, but indirectly, because of the training that they would have received, and they would have followed in their parents' footsteps. So the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth.
Humans, bad people, bad, naughty. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So here you get into one of the logical problems. I think somebody in the chat earlier was asking, well, what's the logical problems with the flood myth? Well, here you get into the logical problem. If this God is supposedly all-knowing and all-powerful, it is incoherent that they could be regretful about anything that they did. That's logically incoherent.
Boy, whew, the biblical illiteracy is dripping off of this man like sweat on a Texas, heat wave, during a Texas heat wave. Should I even address this? Because if I address every single blunder, I'll never get this video finished, and I need to get out of here in about an hour, because I usually go for my morning jog. You hear the birds chirping. When I don't have to work, I usually go out in the morning and try to get some air. So I'm briefly, let me just say this. Regret here, repented. When the Lord repents, it doesn't mean the same thing that you mean when you say you repenting of something, okay? It just simply doesn't. And I'll just leave it at that for time's sake. I don't have time to go into a full explanation and correct every error this guy's going to make. I just simply don't. We'll do that during the debate if we have it.
Coherent. If you're all-knowing and all-powerful, you simply make things the way that you want them to be.
No. Oh my God. You make things the way you must. So you make pre-programmed robots to only do good and have no chance to do evil. What type of world do you think God created? A real world? A world where consequences follow logically? A world where science can be rendered? A world where a baby is thrown off of a building and doesn't die, somehow floats, hovers in the air, because you think that God should have created a universe that makes sense to you, that where babies don't die. Science cannot be rendered in that type of universe, because now Newton's got to figure out another formula. He's got to figure out another formula for when he throw a baby out the window. Now the buoyancy, the force, the acceleration, all of that, the energy, the mass, all of that has to be changed now because it's a baby. you threw, not a rock. Come on, man. So God created a real world with real consequences for your actions. You don't like it too bad. Create your own universe where bullets curve, miss you, but hit someone else maybe you don't like. Charlie Kirk, lying liberal.
From the get-go, you don't make any mistakes. You don't have any regrets. Okay.
You don't make any mistakes. Okay. Again, he is interpreting mistake and regret. If you look that word up in the Hebrew, it doesn't denote the same thing it means to us today. Okay. So that's a presentism fallacy. It's a fundamental error that the liberal scholar makes. I'm going to try to, Jay Passick made that mistake and got called out 7 years ago. I'm going to try to interpret the Bible based on terminology that and how we define these terms today, instead of going into the Greek and the Hebrew and saying, well, what does it mean to regret or repent in 1611 maybe? What did it mean then? What did slave mean then to them? Why are they interpreting the word slave or aved, someone who is voluntarily working, living in the household of Abraham? He was actually born in the household of Abraham, about to inherit all of Abraham's wealth. Why are they calling this individual a slave? In our culture, we would not call them a slave. In 1611, they would. Or servant. That, and the newer translations change it to servant. In Leviticus 25, it's changed to servant for the newer translations. For the 1611 translation, it's slave, because a slave or serf in 1600s, 1500s was fine. They didn't have a problem with that word. We today, we're so taboo today, we're so sensitive about the slavery issue because of our past. We've removed those terms, and now we use terms like servant, maid, live-in maid, live-in butler. Okay? We've even found ways to make being a janitor sound better, right? Custodial. I'm a custodian. Okay. But janitors used to be the laughing stock. Now janitors make more money than they're usually the highest paid in the building besides the special ed teacher and the principal. The janitor is the highest paid person in the building. Being a janitor isn't so bad today, right? Being a slave wasn't a problem for them. So they didn't have a problem calling you a slave, even though the person across the street who's in chains is also called a slave. They didn't have a problem with that in the ancient Near East. In our time, we did. So we got rid of that designation for people who were volunteering. And we only use that for people who were kidnapped and forced to work. We call them slaves. We don't call people who volunteer slaves. Okay? That's part of my biblical slavery challenge. If you ever try to debate me on slavery, you will get crushed. You'll get crushed on, just like Jay Passick did, on the word slave alone and the etymology of the word. You'll get crushed on that alone. You won't even get to my other premises. You won't even get to it. It's like Jay Passick did on my previous stream. He couldn't even get past premise 1. He was done. He was lost. He was stuttering. He didn't know what to say. He had never heard this, even though he's heard this argument before, I'm sure, but he didn't pay attention to it. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on earth.
It's completely insane that religious people will say, Christians, Muslims, and Jews will say that, oh yeah, this God is all powerful, all knowing, all good, and yet here at the very beginning, we're not even through into the end of chapter 6 yet, and we're already seeing that just simply logically is incoherent. So what is this God going to do that he's so regretful for his own handiwork, right? Because who made the humans? Who made the hearts and the minds of the humans? Well, God did. This is all his creation. So we'll be talking about a little bit about boats today. I am a boat builder myself by trade. Now I sold my boat building business. I still during this in the summer.
He is a boat builder. All right, let's get into the art, please, because you don't have an idea. You don't have any idea what you're talking about or what anthropomorphic language is. Okay, so that's part of your biblical literacy. The Bible often describes God in human terms so we can understand him. Okay, it's called an anthropomorphism, or we could just say a morphism. Right, it's a heavenly condescension. It's not designed to give you a one-to-one corresponding understanding of God and humans. Okay, the Hebrew word can mean also to change course. So when applied to God, it communicates a change in God's actions towards his people. Not that he's reacting, but he's now going to do something else, which he'd already knew he was going to do before he created the world. Okay. It's not his emotional response. So some people would argue that, God is showing that he's emotional like us. So the best analogy I can think of is to think of a judge. The law does not change, but the outcome changes depending on whether a person is guilty or repentant. Okay. So, oh, somebody's here. Look who's here. Oh, it's Wild Heart. Oh boy. What does he want? What does he want? Hey, Wild Heart.
Hello.
How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for letting me on. Thank you.
Yeah, and good to have you. I have about I'll give you an hour. Maybe I have about an hour, and then I have to go.
Yeah,
But
that'd be fine.
I'm discussing the flood. And have you heard of OE, objective ethics?
Objective ethics. Yeah, I don't
Objective
believe in them, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay. You've heard of him or no?
Yeah, I have heard of them. Yeah, they don't exist, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
All right. Did you have anything you wanted to say so far about what I on the arc or y'all can
I'm, to be honest, I've not been watching. But yeah, I would just sorry to get back to this, but first you would have to prove that God exists, and then maybe you would have objective.
All right.
Even then, you wouldn't have objective ethics. So
What if I argued that proving the God of the Bible's existence would actually disprove the God of the Bible?
if proving the God of the Bible would disprove the God of the Bible, is that what you're asking?
We were to actually find empirical evidence for the God of the Bible, that would
Yeah.
disprove the God of the Bible. It would prove he did not exist.
So
Or
if
he's
you
not God.
so if you proved the God of the Bible existed, you would disprove the God of the Bible existed.
That's correct.
You're a
Because
fuckwit.
because the God of the Bible.
You're a fucking idiot.
Well, sure. Let me explain why before I kick you.
Yeah.
Because the Bible, the God of the Bible says that he cannot be proven through empirical means. So if he is proven through empirical means, it's either not him, maybe it's Allah, or he just doesn't exist.
Right, but if you proved him in the first place, then you wouldn't be able to disprove him because you'd already have proven him. Do you know what I mean?
Whatever you found,
You're a fucking idiot.
whatever you've proven or found is not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible cannot be empirically proven.
Right, so why do you believe in it?
He cannot be fully exhausted.
So why do you believe? So
Scientifically.
what? So why do
Because
you believe
for that
he-
reason, for that reason, because he cannot be rendered scientifically. He is
Right.
God.
So
He
you
is not
believe?
an animal. He is not an animal
Shush,
or
shush,
someone
shush,
like
shush,
you.
shush,
No, no,
shush,
no, no.
shush, shush.
No, you shush, 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 shush. So let's get back to the video. Okay. So your argument about proving God's existence for someone like myself makes no sense. Okay. Because as soon as you find that empirical evidence, I'm going to say, nope, that's not the God of the Bible then. so,
Right.
so we're
Right.
wasting our time.
Wait, let me speak. So let me say that leprechauns can't be disproven. Do you believe that leprechauns exist?
Leprechauns can't be disproven.
Yeah, they can't be disproven. That's why you should believe that they exist.
No,
Because
I'm
they
not
can't be
saying that's why you
disproven.
should believe. I'm saying for me, the
That's what you
argument
just said.
doesn't make sense for me.
That is literally what you just
No,
said.
no, I'm
You
not
should
saying that's what
believe
you
that God
believe.
exists because you can't disprove him.
All right, let's get back to the video. You're not making much sense. Maybe you had a little too much to drink.
Time actually do projects, working on boats, picking up side work, doing stuff on my own, selling boats, whatever I might get into, because the weather when the weather's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Take another chug. Take another chug-a-lug.
But I have 2 patents. I'm a licensed boat manufacturer, so I know.
I'm a licensed boat manufacturer, so I know how many animals I need to add to the boat to make it sink, even though the Bible doesn't add those animals to the boat. But I'm going to add them so I can make it sink because I'm a Bible boat engineer.
Boats.
Well,
And imagine if I built
well,
manufactured
can
a
you
licensed
tell
boat
us
builder. If I
Yes, Walhart.
right? Doesn't the Bible says that every animal is on the boat?
No, it does not.
Was it not?
No.
So you believe in
Please,
evolution
please
then?
do some research.
So
Do
you
some
believe in?
research.
Can I
You're
just give
older
a
than
shout?
no,
Can I just give a shout out to Sammy in the
no,
side
no.
chat?
He's a
Or front here, yeah.
he's an idiot. No. So do some do some research on how many animals were on the ark. Okay. Don't you're older
Right.
than 35. You should know this. Now he's younger. He's in his 20s. He doesn't realize that these arguments were already debunked. These lies, trying to put
Right.
1,000, trying to put 100,000 animals on the ark so it won't float anymore. So
Right.
there
But
was a
wait.
study done. There was a study done by students, graduate
Yeah.
students at Lancaster University. They determined, based on the biblical text, that only about 60,000 animals were required. 60,000.
Right.
And some scholars argue that their estimation was still too high, much too high. Only about 16,000 per each male, 16,000 male, so 3,200
Right.
or 32,000.
So
Only
where did
about
the other? Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
So where did the other animals come from?
What other animals?
The millions of species of animals
Speciation.
that exist now. Where did they come from? Did God create them later, or if they weren't on the ark, then they wouldn't have survived? So where did they come from?
Well, there's a lot involved with your answer.
Yeah, I would like an
A
answer.
lot involved with your answer. You're making several assumptions, several different assumptions for one.
Right. So there were only 32,000 species on the ark, and there were millions of species now. I'm asking where did the extra species
the
come from?
modern species, the word species did not exist. They didn't use the word species. So a kind is something, yeah, a kind is something that is understood as a broader category, perhaps a genius or a family. Okay. For example, one kind would be wolves. So the
Yeah.
species came, the thousands of species that you're trying to put on the boat with that one book,
Millions.
the thousands of species of wolves that you're trying to put on would would not be necessary. Only one
I'm,
kind of
I'm,
wolf.
I'm not. I'm not saying they're necessary. I'm saying
Only
did
one
they?
kind of wolf.
I'm saying did
Excuse
they
me. Excuse
exist?
me. Excuse me. I was in the middle of a sentence. Only one kind of wolf would be necessary, not the 100 kinds of wolves. Only one kind of fox would be necessary. So
So one kind of dog.
there were fewer representative groups than what
Yeah.
objective ethics and what you're trying to force on the ark. Okay.
Right. So did one kind of dog exist on the ark?
That's right. That's all they would need was one
So you believe
kind
in
of dog.
evolution then? Because there are
There is
loads
diversification. Yes, there is
there is loads
diversification.
of kinds of dogs, so
There
you
is,
believe in
of
evolution.
course, there's
That's what-
diversification. No, evolution is not the same as diversification of what you call evolution. There are several types of humans. When humans move to different parts of the world, they adapt to that part of the world. They have children. They mix with other people from other parts of the world. They adapt to environments. There's variation within kinds over generations. This is sometimes called microevolution, change within a kind. Okay.
Yeah,
Back to the video. Thank you.
I'm sick of this. I'm gonna leave.
You're going to
Bye.
leave? Okay. All right.
Built a boat and I decided to just drill a bunch of holes in the bottom of it. Let's say I put a electric outboard on it and I decide not to insulate the wiring. Okay. And I don't cap off fuel tanks and things like that. So you've got fumes now being released out of the fuel tanks. And I overload it because I don't care about capacity. I put 50 kids in there and push them off into the ocean. And they're tootling around this electric boat. Well, then you get sparks fly, fumes ignite, holes are letting water into the boat. These kids are all dead, right? Whose fault is that? I mean, they're in the boat, they're tootling around in the water. Do I blame them for it? Well, no, it's my fault because I fucking know better. I know I build boats. I know you have to insulate your wiring. You have to cap off your fuel. You have to seal off your hull, so on and so forth, right? So it's my fault. I'm the designer. I have to take responsibility for that. And yet, according to this religion, God is somehow completely has no culpability in what happens with the sinful nature.
So this is another argument from the problem of evil. It's easily debunked in one sentence. God cannot create himself. Okay, so because God cannot create himself, anything he creates will be less than him, less than perfect, subject to failure, not perfect. And thus, by creating humans, angels, beings that have volition and are sentient, which is what he wanted, that actualizes evil. That makes evil a possibility. Okay, so your alternative, OE, is no existence, no creation at all. So I would argue that a God that does not create, that does not share any of his attributes, love, uh, things like art and beauty and all of these things that we enjoy as humans. If he doesn't share any of those things, of course, along comes with that the bad things like disasters and calamities. But if he doesn't share those things, keeps them to himself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, keeps love to himself, doesn't share love with anyone, I would say it doesn't create anyone to bestow those love, those attributes. Uh, I would say that God is more evil than the God that decides to create. Okay, problem of evil destroyed. Problem of evil destroyed. And let's hear your argument for why non-existence, God not creating, and God keeping those attributes to himself, which would be a selfish God. Let's see your argument for why that God is better. OE. Let's hear it. All right. So what animal became the kangaroo? Well, again, what premieres would Morop, I can't pronounce the man's name, but I've already given you the source. I don't think he tracks modern species back one by one, but he works with the concept of kinds, not modern species. So a kind is broader than a species. Uh, so instead of saying this exact animal turned into a platypus, which is what you can't do either from the evolutionary model, he will say that his model says that a broader ancestral kind later diversified into multiple species. So he would argue, maybe similar to what you would argue, that the platypus came from a broader ancestral kind that later diversified into multiple platypuses or multiple species. So he assumes modern specialization came later. So this is important because the platypus is extremely specialized. Evolution can't account for it. It lays eggs. It has venom. It has an electroreception. Um, so this is a difficult animal for not just the ARC model, but also evolutionary model. So I don't know why you're bringing up the platypus, but uh, so the bottom line is that there is no animal named on the ark that became the platypus. Um, it would have been a descendant of a broader original kind, okay, that was carried on the ark. Okay.
Nature of men. It's God's completely, who put the talking animal in the garden in the first place?
Who
The
put
talking animal, the magic fruit, and all that nonsense.
who put the talking animal in the garden in the first place? God. Oh my God. Again, the atheist believes. Now, oddly enough, when you ask the atheist if he were God, what type of world they would create, they would say a world with no diseases, right? They would say a world with no consequences for bad decisions. Okay. But in that world that they create, subsequently, they've now created a world in which science is impossible. You can't experiment because your experiment today may not result in the same thing. You drop that apple, if you drop the baby instead of an apple, you no longer have the same force and acceleration and motion. You now have to retool your entire formulas, all have to be changed based on your morality, which is subjective, which can change tomorrow. You can't do science in a world in which disasters aren't the case and calamities aren't the case. Science would be rendered impossible. Nothing would be repeatable, observable, uh, and the scientific method would be rendered meaningless. Okay. So God created a real world in which there are real consequences for your stupid actions. Okay. That's why we know in a debate about morality, that's why we know that if we were to take all the Christians and put them on an island and take all the atheists and put them on an island, we know who would last longer based on the social sciences, based on the fact that God created a real world where consequences would lead or follow. Uh, Bad behavior. Consequences follow like day follows night. Consequences follow bad behavior like day follows night. Okay. That's why 95% of Dr. Bernard Komecki's patients, a proctologist, anal specialist, 95% of his patients are homosexual males. Consequences follow like day follows night. Okay, liberal? All right. Hello, liberal. Lazy term that ignorant that apologists use. Okay. I like the term liberal because it describes who you are. Okay, but yeah, you're right. Ultimately, specifically, I would be, if you asked me, I would say, well, if you say, well, why am I liberal? I would tell you why. Because you seek to liberate X. Okay, so you're not a liberal in the sense that the Republicans were, when they sought to seek to liberate the slaves. You're a liberal because you want to liberate men to go into women's bathrooms. Okay, so we reject that type of liberal, and so does science.
Who did that? Well, God did. So to blame the people for God's actions is absolutely insane. Imagine if I put a gun, a loaded gun on the table, and I had two little kids, and I says, okay, now
Let's not hear this like babble about his silly analogy, moral criticism of the God of the Bible. The problem of evil can be dealt with in 20 seconds. And Leo Phillips has no response. He had no response to my answer. He just ignored it and tried to engage with someone else on the panel when I brought it up. So the smartest of the liberals don't have a response to my problem of evil answer. They don't have a response because there really isn't one. Because I removed their straw man and I changed the argument and eliminated one of their options. One of their options was what you just heard objectives say, that God should have created a world in which people cannot make these mistakes. And I can demonstrate from scripture that that is an impossibility. As soon as God creates anything, it's subject to failure. In fact, it will fail. In fact, his highest cherub, his highest honored angel, betrayed him because he was given volition and he is not God. Naturally, he is going to say, according to evolution, according to what you believe about species, he is going to try to usurp the authority. When the lion reaches the point where he has now encountered a new pride, he is going to try to usurp the authority because dominance is survival of the fittest, is the rule, is the law. Creatures that are not all powerful, God doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to struggle for survival of the fittest because he's all powerful. So there's no one more powerful than him. So he doesn't have to compete. That's not the case with humans. Humans, if read the book, The Lord of the Flies. It's a book that we should be reading, and we don't read it anymore in high schools. And this was why the atheists don't have. This is why they're ignorant, basically, because they've removed these novels like Steinbeck's Lord of the of Mice and Men and Goldberg's Lord of the Flies. They've removed these novels and replaced them with LGBTQ anti-Christian propaganda. William Goldberg, he writes. I'm sure he was a Christian because Christians somehow, for some reason, do literature a lot better. We do everything better, actually. Like he showed us that he argued for total depravity, I would say. These boys were from they were from a rich neighborhood. They were all going to private school. In fact, they were on a charter to some location, which, normal schools don't go on planes when they go on trips, right? So this was a very, very rich school. Okay, probably private school, high influential, and people who are high in society are sending their children here. Okay. It only took them a few weeks to turn into savages once they were removed from that environment where they had comfortability, where they were being provided for food, clothing, shelter, etc. As soon as you put them on an island where they had to survive and there were limited resources, you saw a switch turn where they started turning on each other. If it were me and Veckel and the last piece of bread on Earth, and it's just me and Veckel in a room, 12 by 12, 12 foot by 12 foot, we would probably fight to the death for that piece of bread. Okay? So when I read Genesis 6, I have no problem with Genesis 6 or Genesis 6 verse, what we see on the screen. Because we understand, those of us in the Reformed position understand more so the total depravity of man. The only reason why you're not killing each other is because you have, and we've done experiments with other mammals. We've done experiments with mice on this, and putting them in different environments and seeing how they behave. When you limit the resources, they fight. When you stack them on top of each other, like they've done to blacks in the projects, the Section 8 homes, you see that they don't behave the same way, because built into us, and this is a part of the fall of man, built into us is what the atheist calls the survival mechanisms. Okay, that's built in us. It's a desire to live. God doesn't have that because he is eternal. He doesn't have to struggle or survive to live. Okay, so we have no problem with what we're seeing in the world. We can understand that that's a result of the fall of man. Okay, let me get back to this video because I do have to get out of here.
I'm going to go outside and mow the lawn. Whatever you do, don't play with that because it's really dangerous. And I go outside and mow my lawn, and one of the kids picks up that gun and does something terrible. Terrible accident happens.
All right,
Who is the court going to?
God, this is just the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life. Let me try to fast forward to when he actually gets to the ark.
Cubits high. Make a roof for it. Leave below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the.
Why don't you click on the link then, and we'll see how much I can hear you. I guarantee you won't. You're not doing anything. 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. You can't. Why can't you click on the link? Because like most liberals, they realize they really don't have an argument against us. They can spew their hatred in the chat and their insults, special pleading for a liberal. No, idiot. Context determines even words like liberal, even terms like conservative. Context. What are you trying to conserve? If you're trying to conserve the antebellum South, then no, I'm not that conservative. Not that type of conservative. If you're trying to conserve the Constitution, yes, we are conservatives because we believe that the Constitution, for one, doesn't violate Scripture. It doesn't put us in a situation where we have to choose the Scriptures over the Constitution. Okay, for one. And it promotes many of the biblical values that we find in Scripture. So for two. So you really don't understand anything, BS. You don't understand much, I'll say. You really don't. This is why you don't click on links. Okay. And this is why you don't provide a link on your channel when you go live. You just don't. Because you know I'll click on it. And you don't want me answering your questions. You want to harass some 20-year-old female who just became a Christian or just moved out of her parents' homes, and you know she can't ask her mom or dad anymore. So you want to talk to them, right? Right, liberal? Coward. Let's get back to the video.
Heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. So he's going to show favor. He's going to tell him, here's another contradiction you're going to run into, by the way. This would be number 3. The number of animals.
Number 1 and number 2 was already debunked. So now he has a third contradiction.
That are brought onto the boat. 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come with you to be kept alive. You are to take 2 of every kind of food that is to be eaten and stored away as food for you and them. So now your capacity becomes a major issue. The contradiction is because the number of animals that they bring on, you'll find that, I think, in just 1 or 2 chapters later, you get another account of the animals, how many Noah actually puts on the boat. But so now he has to take 2 of every kind of food that is to be eaten and stored away as food for you and them. So all the animals on the earth, you now have to store all of the food and all of the fresh water. You're not getting all the animals on the earth on any boat that's ever been built. But now you have to.
Because the Bible is not telling you that every animal on the earth. You see how the deception is coming in? It says every kind of animal, not every species of animal. You see how he's trying to usher in and build his straw man with the assumption, the underlying assumptions I spoke about earlier, that every species was on the planet, because they believe that the taxonomy, the modern day taxonomy that was created by a Christian, by the way, Carl Linnaeus, they believe that modern taxonomy is science. This is how dumb these people are. Taxonomy is just a categorization of animals. It's not science itself. We use science. We observe animals and their behavior, their habitats, to categorize them. But your category, your criteria for categorization may be color. I'm just going to put all the animals with the same color in the same category. Okay, if that's your criteria, that's your taxonomy. It's not wrong, because you're using different criteria to categorize or organize your animals. If I decide to organize my animals by way of height, that is a taxonomy. It's not any more scientific than yours. Yours may be based off of DNA and physical structure, which supposedly it is. Your taxonomy is no better than any of the other 3 or 4 that I named. So your taxonomy is not science. So don't try to force it into the biblical taxonomy and say, oh, you're wrong. Oh, look, the Bible says bats are birds. It's wrong. No, liberal. Nice try. Again, you will lose every debate you have with a knowledgeable Christian. Every single debate. That's why they don't come in here. Objective ethics doesn't know me. He thinks I'm one of his cousins who believes in Christianity. But after our first debate, he will never debate me again. I guarantee you. He started his channel a few months ago. He thinks he can have these discussions with Christians and not be embarrassed. He doesn't realize what he's headed into. He just doesn't. Okay. And people like this and Jay Pasick, they will warn you. They'll try to say, oh, he's going to cut you off. They'll warn you not to debate me, but they'll use a different reason. Of course, they're not going to admit that their argument was debunked by Jill. So don't debate him because he's going to debunk your arguments. They won't say that. They'll say, don't debate Jill. He doesn't know how to have a conversation. Wow, you can't even hear other people. This is what they'll say. You can't listen to other people. Your ego is as big as your rear. That's what they'll say. They won't be able to say, oh, he really didn't defeat my argument. They won't be able to say that. Hey, liberal, I am out of here. You can't be honest with yourself. See? Look, he's proving what I'm saying right in real time. He's proving me correct in real time. You can't be honest. That's what they'll say. Don't they debate Joe because he can't be honest. Okay. You're a coward. That's what that means. That's what. So it says every kind of animal. Okay, every kind of creature. All right. And again, in Wuppermeer's book, a feasibility, the ARC feasibility study, he estimates that there were about 1,600 kinds. 1,600. Okay. Not 100,000. Okay. 100,000. So what's the contradiction? Um, I think the contradiction was probably in the kind, the two of every kind. Um, I have to take a look into that. It could be reasonably understood either as complementary details, like most of their contradictions. Uh, Most of their contradictions are really just complementary details, meaning one author is giving you details that another is not. So because they're giving different details that don't contradict, they're just different. They scream contradiction. Look, you know, Matthew doesn't mention the third or the fourth angel, but John does. Matthew only mentions one angel. John mentions two angels. Okay, but where there's two angels, there's always one, right, Bart Ehrman?
Triple your capacity in food and fresh water. Plus, water creates
No need to do that. You don't have to do all that because there aren't 100,000 animals on the ark. OE.
what they call a dynamic load because it's a fluid, right? So it sloshes back and forth is, I guess, the way to dumb that down for everybody. So you've got this liquid that's sloshing back and forth. Well, that affects the dynamics of the boat itself. So as the waves rise one side of the boat, right, the water goes to the opposite side, and then the water has to return to the side it came from because gravity wants to balance it out. You've got waves crashing in the opposite direction. You have this dynamic load shifting. The amount of pressure for a water tank. So a water container, like a water truck, for example, has welded metal, usually aluminum and steel, right, that's welded to keep the pressure, because that water, as you fill up the inside of that tank, the pressure that it wants, that it creates, right? They didn't have welding. They didn't have metal, right?
All right, so all of this is a moot point. Why? Because we only have to have about 16,000 kinds of land vertebrate animals. So if you were to take pairs, now we don't need the animals in the sea, of course. They could survive without a boat because they can swim. All right, so when you if you take a look at Noah's Ark, a feasibility study, John Wood Morapi, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'll put his the title of his book in the side chat for you. He estimates based off the scriptures and what the scriptures say, and how it describes this event. He estimates about 16,000 animals, which means male and female, which would total 32,000, if my math is correct. John Wood Marape, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it's called Noah's Ark, a feasibility study. Okay. So if only roughly 16,000 kinds were needed, 32,000 to 50,000 individual animals would be on the ark. Okay. So he also breaks down how he calculates the space needed for, and the waste and the food. He calculates all of that. So I don't know if he's familiar with this book at all, but everything does fit. There's also another study that students from Lancaster University did. They put 60,000 animals on the ark and considered all of those things as well, and it still would float. Okay, these are physics students from Lancaster University who did this study. Okay. Most animals are small. Majority are rodent sized, not the size of giraffes. Uh, they use juveniles, not adults. Um, it was probably tight packaging, like modern animal transport. He used standardized cages, vertical stacking. Only he claims, regarding the space, only about 50 or to 60% of the ark space would be needed for the animals. That left room for food, water, humans, walkways. Animals were fed. Um, Small animals, of course, dominate the population, so there's a low consumption um, of food that's necessary there. Many animals hibernate, which reduces food needs and movement. Um, he could have stored food for efficiency. He could have used pellets, dried food. Um, so food storage would take relatively small amount of space and is manageable with the again. All of this has been flushed out since 1980. Waste. How does he get rid of the waste? That's another objection that they've been making since 1980. Um, Again, small animals, juveniles. Remember, in addition to forcing 100,000 animals on the ark, making it float, they also put uh, fully grown adult gorillas on who's eating like half of the ark. It starts eating the wood itself because what about a woodpecker? How would that work? Oh, you got a woodpecker on the ark. You have to keep them away from the shell, right? The bowl. All right. Um, so they would also remove they can remove the waste through a chute, trap door. Remember, it took Noah 120 years to build this thing. So this isn't some capsized boat that would just capsize, some canoe that would just capsize as soon as the first wave hits. Some people estimate that this vessel was the size of a medium-sized World War II aircraft carrier. So it was a tremendous vessel, tremendous vessel. The ventilation. Oh, the ventilation system would have been. It's not like mine here, living in my apartment. They didn't have central air, so there's no way they could have survived. But we have in Genesis 6, verse 16, we have a window, so I don't see the issue there. Um, and that's from the actual text, so we don't even have to speculate there. So the big picture is that few animals, mostly small, younger animals. The diets were simple. The packaging of the food was efficient. And they're working on the ark. They're not just sitting around. They're actually moving waste. They're getting rid of waste, of course, because they're surviving. Okay, they're just surviving. So the ark works not because it carried everything as we see it today, atheist, but because it carried smaller, simplified, and we'll say biologically flexible animals, uh, set of animals, not 100,000, um, but just the kinds, the major kinds of the major families of animals, we could say, based on your taxonomy, it would be like a family.
At this point, they would have had maybe what is it, copper
All right, so he's going to go into the fact that we need metal now. So you see, error begets error. So his first error was what? There's 100,000 over 200,000, whatever the number is, animals. Every species had to fit on the ark in order for that species to survive and be around later. That error led him to, well, now you need metal to hold all these things together. And there was no metal around. Therefore, story of the Noah and the ark is false. You see? See how one error can lead to the other? Error begets error. Error gives birth to another error.
They might have been able to make brass. They might have had brass technology. Okay. That's the soft metal. You're not making fastening water tanks of wood and brass. Not to mention the seams of the boat itself, the planks. You can't put that together with soft metals and expect that to hold. You've got expansion and contraction. Okay. You've got conduction, electrical conduction from friction that they don't even address in this, because when the boat moves along the water, it creates friction. So you get this static charge that builds up. It's a latent static charge. So already you're running into some serious engineering issues with this. And we're going to get into, so that's enough of this nonsensical story. So it rains for 40 days, 40 nights. The waters flood the earth for about a year. So they've got a year's worth of supplies, allegedly.
Oh, by the way, according to the evolutionary model, or we could say the biogenesis models, or one of them, it rained for over 1 million years. So for it constantly, but nonstop rained for 1 million years. And that's how they get to this alphabet soup of life that somehow came together to make single-celled organisms, and then multiplied and became tadpole, etc. And eventually us, right? So it to reign for 40 days and 40 nights, nothing compared to your mythology.
It's nonsense off of my screen. That just pisses me off even thinking about it. Okay. So let me just get into.
Oh boy. All right.
Some of the argument here.
I think we've already dealt with.
Okay, so the global flood myth is the most ridiculous story in the Bible. And that's saying a lot, because you got a book that has talking animals, people raising from the dead. What else do we got? The crazy Exodus myth. I mean, there's just so many ridiculous stories in the Bible. But I would say that the global flood myth is probably the most ridiculous story of all of them when you actually think about what's happening. This myth has so much empirical evidence against it that we can definitively say it never happened. It's generally much harder to.
No, you don't. You don't have any empirical evidence. You only have what you propped up. You only have your straw man that you propped up, your underlying assumptions that are not found in the text, that you forced into the text when you omitted the word kinds when you read the text. So in your reading of the text, you showed your deception. He omitted, when he read the text, he literally omitted. He said, every bird, every animal. He literally omitted the word kind in his rendering of the text, which probably means he did so in his head. And then he decides that, well, if it's every animal, it's got to be every animal that exists today, right? That's over 100,000 species. You literally just misrepresented the text and created a straw man just to knock it down. And this is the case with most, if not all, of their arguments. This is the case. Sorry. Let me get to the point where he's actually going to.
It wasn't a boat. It wasn't a vessel at all. It was a box. The word ark means box or container. It doesn't mean boat. This is not a boat or a ship. The dimensions given.
That's correct. It is not. He's correct about that. It is more like a cargo type of ship, if you will. Okay. Could it float? That's what you have not disproven. Could it survive? Yes, it could. I have two studies that I can rely on. I have a Christian and I have a secular study from Lancaster. What do you have? Your expertise, which are useless because you've added 100,000 animals to the boat, thus making it sink.
Describe a cuboid or rectangular prism, not a marine vessel, like as you see in all the Magic Zoo books.
It's not a cube. The cubes don't float. The Epic of Gilgamesh has a cubed boat, which is why we reject their version of the story, because science has determined, physics has determined that the dimensions given in the Epic of Gilgamesh, that it would not sustain. It could not be sustained in water, especially when you're dealing with 100-foot waves.
Pictures. There's no hull, there's no keel, no riggers, no mast, no bow, no stern, no transom, blah, 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 blah. It's not a fucking boat. It's a box. Here's a clue. Wood floats. No shit. Right up until you load hundreds of thousands of land animals, food, and fresh water into the rickety wooden box, at which point the downward pressure relative to the mass.
There you go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Do I need to say more? Do I need to show you more? There you go. There's his assumption. Hey, Brother Veckel, how's it going? Yeah, I am getting ready to end the stream. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I've been doing these late night streams, and it's not fair to those of you who don't wake up until normal times. But I know today is April Fool's Day. Today is the atheist holiday, so maybe I might do another stream later with Veckel, and because it is your holiday today. It is your holy day. This is a high day for the atheists. Okay, so we can't miss out on the opportunity to celebrate and mocking the atheists on his holiday, just like he does to our holy days. You know, he tries to mock Easter, and so we're gonna mock the atheists on their holy day, their highest day of the year. Okay, so maybe I'll do a stream later when I get back, but I do have to take care of some errands, and hopefully I'll be back in time to before the day is over to mock the atheist. And I think I've done enough mocking this atheist and his terrible rendering of the biblical text, and even in his reading of Genesis, he omits details that would render his argument moot, pointless, irrelevant, incorrect. Okay, the text does not say every species that exists today. It doesn't even say every species that existed then. It says every kind, which would be more like an order or family in our modern taxonomical system. Okay,
Mass increases well beyond with the upward pressure due to gravity. Your ark would be foundered due to loss of buoyancy and resting with little Davy Jones in Davy Jones's locker. Just for fun, let's pretend that the Magic Zoo boat did float long enough for that first mile-high supersonic wave to come smashing into splinters, capsize it, and sink it. That's right, the turbulence that would have ensued from the Earth's crust to open up and allow the waters of the depths to assist the deluge would create tidal waves, tsunamis, and hurricanes the like which have never been seen before. A modern U.S. battleship couldn't withstand these sea conditions.
Game over,
I want to
liberal.
close this rant that I've been on.
Game over, liberal. Yeah, let's close this rant out with the actual science. This is from Genesis Apologetics, I believe. It's on the Noah's flood, not the actual boat, but I'll put a link, but on the flood itself, as far as the flood waters, and is that feasible? And I'll put a link to this channel in the description or the comment section when I'm done. But I gotta run. Jesus is Lord, and he's coming back. I'll see you next time. Maybe later today with Veckel. April Fool's Day, atheist.
Take a look at our North American continent. Do you see anything that might indicate a catastrophic past? One of biblical proportions? A catastrophe so massive that it pushed up mountain ranges that cover many states today? One that was so intense that it resulted in 13 states being filled with billions of fossils, including hundreds of thousands of dinosaurs, mixed with marine creatures? The markers of a worldwide flood that covered North America are obvious and are clearly still seen today. Let's go back in time to see if we can reconstruct just what happened during the biblical flood of Noah's time. Before the flood began, North America was different, much different. You couldn't even put boundary markers around what we now call California and much of the West Coast. South America was pressed up against North America. Most of the high hills did not even exist, at least not yet. The environment was much different, and large creatures roamed the lush green landscape, thriving in what was intended to be paradise. But when human wickedness became unrestrained, and every thought of the human heart was only evil continually, God decided to wipe this rampant wickedness from the face of the earth. Genesis 6 records that God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." The process you're about to see unfold will show you just how life on earth was extinguished with the earth, save those on the ark. The Bible records that this fearsome display of God's wrath began when all the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. When this happened, the North American continent began a major transformation. Animals living in rich pre-flood habitats were about to be rapidly buried and entombed by tsunamis, mud flows, and volcanic ash. As the fountains of the Great Deep split apart, catastrophic oceanic rifting quickly spread around the globe. The scars of this rifting remain today, with some 40,000 miles of mid-ocean ridges visible on the ocean bottom. This rapid rifting caused oceanic plate to plunge or subduct beneath the North American continent. Just as today, ocean plates plunging into the earth generated earthquakes and tsunamis. However, because of the speed of this process, the tsunamis were hundreds of feet high. Nothing on the continent could withstand these massive surges. Early in this unfolding cataclysm, the Sauk, Tippecanoe, and Kaskaskia megasequences of fossil-bearing sediments were deposited over North America. Seawater rose globally as a result of new seafloor formation and increased thermal expansion. However, because only a small portion of the global seafloor had been replaced by new, warmer, more buoyant seafloor, these first three megasequences were mostly affecting the shallow marine realm, as the sea level was not high enough to inundate the North American interior. It was not until the later Absaroka sequence, when sea level was higher, that we see the first coal seams and land animals mixed in with marine animals in the fossil record. Once the Pacific and Farallon plates began forming in earnest, during the Absaroka phase, subduction began along the west coast on a massive scale. The weight of the subducting slab along the western edge of North America caused that region to be depressed, and the Zuni megasequence began. This rapid plate tectonic process and subsequent sedimentation buried the pre-flood lowlands first in the southwest, what we call the Triassic today, New Mexico and West Texas. This was soon followed by the Jurassic system rocks across Utah and Colorado, and then the Cretaceous system across Wyoming and Montana. Although the Farallon plate subducted initially at a steep angle beneath western North America, it appears to have been carrying along one or more large volcanic oceanic plateaus. When these plateaus reached the subduction zones at the edge of the North American continent, they acted to resist the subduction and caused the Farallon plate to begin moving horizontally beneath North America instead of at a steep angle. As the Farallon plate begins moving horizontally, it begins to interact strongly with the North American plate above it. That interaction first strips away the denser bottom part of the North American plate west of the current Rocky Mountains, shoving it off to the east. Simultaneously, the horizontally moving Farallon plate also drags warm, weak, and buoyant lower crustal rock of the North American plate along with it, doubling the crustal thickness beneath where the Rocky Mountains are today. Moreover, as the Farallon plate moves beneath western North America, its extra weight pulls down the land surface above temporarily to form the western interior seaway, in which huge numbers of both sea and land animals can be found entombed today. A considerable area of North America was covered by the Western Interior Seaway. This increase in oceanic coverage means that the amount of North American Cretaceous sediment is greater than Jurassic or Triassic sediment. This partly explains the greater known diversity of Cretaceous dinosaurs. As the flood continues, the spreading ridge marking the western boundary of the Farallon Plate gets overridden by the North American Plate. This allows the Farallon Plate to detach and sink into the deeper mantle beneath, where remnants of it are even seen today. Widespread volcanism is also involved in this process, with massive volcanic activity escaping from tears within and along the edges of the subducting plate traveling from west to east. This explains massive dinosaur graveyards preserved in sediments mixed with volcanic ash. One section of the Morrison Formation, called the Brushy Basin Member, spreads across 5 states and includes over 4,000 cubic miles of volcanic materials. Without a single volcano in the Morrison Formation area, geologists believe this material had to be carried all the way from volcanoes on the west coast, volcanoes created by the magma rising from the subducting ocean crust plunging under the land. Today, these subduction zones form the Ring of Fire, responsible for over 90% of our earthquakes. Many secular geologists agree with these general processes, but disagree with the timeline, saying it took place over millions of years. But think about it. If the mountains were created slowly over millions of years, why are so many of them filled with dead creatures that are buried in the mud that killed them? The thousands of mass bone graveyards in the Jurassic and Cretaceous layers are filled with both land and marine creatures that are entombed by the very mud that covered them, causing their death. In some places, this happened so quickly that only adult dinosaurs are found entombed in the mud as they were fleeing for their lives. Here's one massive graveyard in northern Montana that's over 1.2 miles long and contains 30 million fossil fragments, representing over 10,000 adult Maiasaura that were simultaneously buried. In this entire collection of bones, not a single baby was found. Every one of these 10,000 Maiasaura was between 9 and 23 feet long. Does this seem like the adult dinosaurs were stampeding away from the raging floodwaters, with 100% of their young falling behind and being engulfed in a different region? Many of these creatures were buried so quickly, their soft tissues are still preserved to this day. Finding soft tissues that are supposedly over 65 million years old is a very odd thing, especially in the case of collagen, where secular scientists have placed a maximum shelf life well short of 1 million years. In fact, over 50 peer-reviewed secular science publications have now identified 14 different bioorganic materials in dinosaur bone. The fact that 97% of the dinosaur fossil record is disarticulated shows that they were catastrophically wiped out, with their bodies being strewn apart and then buried. And